You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WYPC.
WCYTV
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening. Welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. It's a great evening to be with you, though it may be a little stormy where I am outside because we have a torrential rainstorm of news. I know, not really a good pun, but I don't have time to explain it. Let's dig right in. We have additional reports on more U.S. aircraft and types in the Middle East. The B-2 Spirits are also being joined by, believe it or not, the B-52 Stratofortress bombers. The longest-serving bomber in history is pounding the living crap out of Iran right now. But before we get to that, I want to talk very briefly about one of the most bizarre stories that has come to light. Clyde J. McLemore, the founder and executive director of the Black Lives Matter Lake County chapter, that would be BLM Chicago, one of the key Black Lives Matter chapters in the country. Amazing security camera footage shows him in what is being described as a physical altercation. He starts out by just beating the living snot out of Nyesha A. Hill, who was the project manager for the Black Lives Matter Lake County Chicago chapter. This is a bizarre fight to witness, not only because they are duking it out in front of the Black Lives Matter banner in this particular dark hallway. This is security camera footage. Initially, it appears that she has her phone flashlight on, which means she was likely recording something when she was going to talk to him. And then he shoves her into the wall. Again, quite a lovely scuffle from the Black Lives Matter leaders in BLM Chicago. She appears to throw him off. He gets back up, and they go at it again. So, excellent. Fascinating behavior. Now, this is an incident that took place, according to the surveillance cameras, on October 24th, 2025, in the BLM Resource Center office in Waukegan, Illinois. It's part of the greater Chicago area. Now, here's the catch. On January 12th, at the exact same office, yet another fight between these two occurred. This time, it's McLemore who called 911, claiming that Hill demanded money and cigarettes. Stellar behavior. And then attacked him when he refused, saying the funds from BLM were depleted. So she asked for money and cigarettes, and he said the funds. I guess because that's what BLM is for, a little spare cash and some cigarettes. Hill countered, saying she was seeking payment for unpaid work, and McLemore initiated the shoving. Both sustained minor injuries, scratches, busted lip, but neither pressed charges. Hill explicitly stated she didn't want to see a black man jailed. And then it said police found no probable cause for the arrest due to conflicting accounts and advised no further contact. Why does this story matter? Why am I bringing this up to you? Who's investigating the claims that started this fight? Initially, this fight took place when Nyesha A. Hill approached Clyde J. McLemore, the leader of BLM in Chicago, and said, hey, with the flashlight on, recording in his face, are you embezzling money? She accused him of stealing money from the organization on personal expenses, quote, like girls and gambling, while failing to pay her for work. So her issue wasn't that he was embezzling money from BLM, like other BLM leaders have done. Not for, no big concerns for the embezzlement and the stealing of the money from the community you said that was going to enrich the lives of black people. No, it is just two of them, just a couple of them. The real issue is that you didn't cut her in on it. Now, again, the reason I bring this up to you, where is the federal investigation? Where is Brandon Johnson, who said the feds don't need to worry about fraud in Chicago because I got it under control? After an accusation of embezzlement, there's no investigation from city officials. They're just like, don't do it again. And then they got into it again because now there's not enough money to give her money and cigarettes. Incredible. Now, this is one of many kind of breaking fraud investigation stories currently happening. The Department of Justice has opened new investigations. It's like the 234th investigation on fraud into several Minnesota officials, as well as obfuscation and obstruction charges in federal investigations and not to mention a counter lawsuit on Medicaid funding being halted to the state. We'll have to come back and hit this later because we do have some serious international news. In the middle of the U.S., Iran, Israeli second Gulf War, third Gulf War, 2.5 men's Gulf War, whatever you want to call it, the Brits have left Cyprus, the island of Cyprus, which they're supposed to be in charge of defending. The Brits have left it completely undefended. So on March 1st and 2nd, a couple of Iranian-made Shahed-type suicide drones struck the runway at Royal Air Force Base on Cyprus, causing a little bit of damage, not necessarily any major casualties, but this was then followed by 2 additional drones heading toward the base that were intercepted, but not by Cyprus coastal defenses. So essentially, Iran, in its flailing and throwing out missiles and suicide drones to any considered allied U.S. military base or associative alliance European military base or allied Muslim nation in the Middle East kind of base, Cyprus left completely undefended. The United Kingdom, under Prime Minister Keir Starmer, said that it was not worth sending the whole fleet to the Mediterranean for. Basically, the Brits, who have twice as many admirals as they do active ships in the British fleet, in the Royal Navy, that they couldn't spare a couple of craft. Now, after a ton, and I mean a ton of backlash today, the United Kingdom has responded by sending the HMS Dragon and 2 entire Wildcat helicopters to enhance drone defenses. So finally, after a lot of yelling and, "Oh, mate," then the British finally said, a little pip pip cheerio, here's 1 boat and 2 helicopters. Excellent. So the Brits are here. They're really hanging in there. The French are also finally sending an aircraft carrier, their Charles de Gaulle aircraft carrier, to the region. The French announced through Macron a kind of national address that I'm not going to play for you because it's in French and I don't speak surrender. Now, here's the interesting side of the international developments for today. They have to do with Spain and Germany. And when I say they have to do with Spain and Germany, I mean that the Chancellor of Germany, Friedrich Merz, came to the United States, sat with President Trump, and said some things that are really diametrically opposed to the rough child of the EU being Spain. And it was a really, really interesting thing. So first of all, kind of the after approach here. You can see over on the live stream, kind of the B-roll footage that we got, or the B-roll photographs, I should say. Friedrich Merz posts, good to see you again, Mr. President. Difficult times call for strong partnerships. Iran spreads terror. This endangers our partners and us. We share a clear interest in putting an end to all this. Now, the reason this is interesting is he is just off the heels of a major series of meetings with the rest of the European Union with China. The same China that Keir Starmer is bending over and licking the Winnie the Pooh-shaped boots of the communists in Canada. And then, of course, looking over at Spain and some nations in Africa and some of the European countries that have decided that China is the bastion of economics and freedom and prosperity over the United States. Friedrich Merz came back from those particular meetings and has been wildly closer to the United States and far more deferential to President Trump. This is according to Hans Manche. He's the author of Swift Boating America, phenomenal international analyst. He said, quote, "Then in China, unlike Carney, Starmer, Macron, and the rest who slobbered all over President Xi, Merz, at least, held back a little. When he came back, he admitted to the Europeans that they should be grateful for what Trump is doing, acknowledging that they themselves don't even have the capacity to defend Europe militarily or economically." It appears that the U.S. Marshall Plan, folks, did a little bit of heavy lifting. Now, this brings us to some of the fun fireworks of the day. Of course, here's Friedrich Merz giving kind of the nice glossy announcement, as all foreign dignitaries do to the president when they visit.
As I said, in Germany the last 2 days, we are supporting the United States and Israel to get rid of this terrible terrorist regime. And we are looking forward to a day after, and we have to talk about the strategy. What is following after this this regime is away, and we have to strategize on this entire region. And we are having a high interest in common approach and common work and what we can do. And this is important not just for the Americans. This is extremely important for Europe.
So, interesting perspective from him. Radio crew will send you guys to the commercial break while we continue on the live stream, youtube.com/Daily Signal. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. Now, while the commercial crew is away, we don't do that here. So there are two things he focuses on, one of which I'm writing the article is not out yet. I know I referenced it yesterday. I apologize. I'm not trying to tease you endlessly. There is a question as to what comes after the regime in Iran, which is crumbling and falling apart by the minute, though they have now announced their second or third, probably, emergency mullah, the new supreme leader. The white smoke has appeared above the wreckage of the Iranian buildings instead of the black smoke. So they've chosen their new Ayatollah. It's exciting stuff. I know, really, really, really fun times. Of course, they did it Nazi style at like IRGC troops with their Kalashnikovs in the room with the council of experts. I don't want to get ahead of myself. We'll get there. The Germans are showing a little bit of concern over economic investment in the region and who is going to control Iran, whether it's going to balkanize and split into a couple of countries, and we'll get to there. But first, a little bit of Spain, because the president of the United States is not a big fan of the Spanish, who have not been relevant since we ripped their colonies away from them. The Spanish are very grumpy, and they have announced, because they are so socially progressive, that the United States may not use any of their military installations or bases because they are Spanish. They say, "Para, you stop right there, American scum." The president of the United States, Donald Trump, not really liking that kind of thing. He didn't take it too well.
Some of the European, like Spain, has been terrible. In fact, I told Scott to cut off all dealings with Spain. Spain, first of all, it started when every European nation, at my request, paid 5%, which they should be doing. And everybody was enthusiastic about it, Germany, everybody. And Spain didn't do it. And now Spain actually said that we can't use their bases, and that's all right. We could use their base if we want. We could just fly in and use it.
First of all, hearing a president talk like that, that's standing up for Americans. Like, we can use your base if we want. I don't care. We'll just go ahead and use it. We don't need you. Now, again, I will remind you that on the military side, who foots more of the bill for NATO if the other member states don't pay their fair share? It's the United States. But for the EU, for the European Union, who foots the economic bill for everyone if they don't put in their fair share? It's Germany. And so Trump and Merz are ideologically aligned here in hating the Spanish. I feel you, man, me too. Because Spain sucks. They're eternally in debt. They're cashing out endless loans they can't pay back. Their exports are sweat and shame, which coincidentally is now all Iran is exporting. And the idea, the Spanish response is that, well, you can't use our ports. Trump's like, you can't even use your own ports and bases.
Nobody's going to tell us not to use it, but we don't have to. But they were unfriendly, and so I told him we don't want to. Spain has absolutely nothing that we need other than great people. They have great people, but they don't have great leadership.
Smart.
And as you know, they were the only country that in NATO would not agree to go up to 5%. I don't think they would have agreed to go up to anything.
Now, the president of the United States announced that, well, fine, we're just going to go ahead and cut off trade with Spain. Screw them. We don't need them. We don't need any of this nonsense. How about no? And to my actual and genuine surprise, Friedrich Merz, again, you don't usually see foreign diplomats when President Trump's like, you know what, screw them, they suck and they smell, and also I think they're kind of ugly. Maybe I'll triple the tariffs and also send over the Marines. Usually the European or the Canadian or whatever it is, I know I don't mean to be repeating myself there. Usually the European will sit there kind of awkwardly because the president of the United States is riffing. I did not expect to see Friedrich Merz go, yeah, embargo them and screw the Spanish.
The answer on that is quite simple. We are trying to convince Spain to catch up with the 3% or 3.5%, which we agreed on in NATO. And as the president said, it's correct. Spain is the only one who is not willing to accept that. And we are trying to convince them that this is a part of our common security that we all have to comply with these numbers, and this is 3.5 for military and another 1.5 for our military infrastructure. So Spain has to comply with that.
The strong words from Mers there. Again, a little backbone in Europe. I never thought I'd see the day. Now, we'll get to that and kind of the situation on the ground in the second Gulf War here in just a minute. We got to bring the radio crew back from commercial. Don't go anywhere, because the Muslim countries are mad, and it's not at the United States. It's something we'll talk about in a second. Don't go anywhere.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
I gotta admit, the AI remixes, like of President Trump, only it's instead of Iran so far away, it's I bomb Iran night and day for USA. It's fun. What a time to be alive. Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here in the second Gulf War. As far as the United States is concerned, things are getting a little spicy. And when I say things are getting a little spicy, I do not mean between Iran and Israel and the United States. I don't mean in that way. I mean that Iran, in throwing all of their suicide drones and their missiles, by the way, which they are throwing far fewer in front of absolutely everyone, according to multiple sources now, as well as analysts, the Department of War, so independent analysts in the region, as well as the Department of War itself, the Iranians have blown through almost all of their original ballistic missile stockpile. On Saturday, whereas 90 ballistic missiles were fired at Israel and a number of other style cluster munitions were fired at other U.S. bases, consulates, and embassies in the region, today just 20. Just 20. According to CENTCOM officials, they are seeing fewer and fewer in these waves because, as we've already covered, the Iranians come out of the mountain and they start raising the hydraulic lift on the lowboy to try to get the missile pointed into the sky. And by that time, an MQ-9, or perhaps an F-22 pilot, or an F-35 pilot, or an Israeli pilot, or now perhaps a Saudi Arabian pilot, they see that and they go, I would really like to not see that crew anymore. And so they don't. And there's a new little crater in front of that particular cave. Now, the international situation right now, and this is where I want to get into some of the details here, the Iranian neighbors. So the suicide drones, which again, there appear to be fewer and fewer of, thrown out by Iran, now from regional powers. At this point, the central authority in Tehran has ordered to all of the provinces, and I want to repeat, all of the provinces, the 24 core provinces, 31 though in total, that they are to manage their own defense. So Iran is, at this point, decided that everyone's just kind of on their own. A real yo-yo announcement from the Tehran regime. The missiles, the drones that have been thrown out have hit a couple of places. And it's an interesting strategy here. So first of all, a report coming in just about an hour and a half ago that Iran was successful in throwing a suicide drone into a CIA station in Riyadh.
An Iranian drone has hit a CIA station in Saudi Arabia's capital. Jennifer Griffin is live in Washington. Jennifer, what do we know?
Well, Jessica, we've confirmed with an official source that, in fact, it was an Iranian drone that struck the station, the CIA station in Riyadh. It was part of that U.S. Embassy compound, part of that drone strike last night that led to damage at the embassy. This is certainly a symbolic victory for the IRGC.
Why is it a symbolic victory? Because there is no one in the buildings. No one in the building. There is no one inside the United States Embassy. There is no one inside the United States consulates in any of these surrounding countries. None. They are ghost towns. They are managed at this moment by Roombas and ADT security teams from afar. There's no one home. And so if the Iranian drone hits the empty building, who cares? They'll think that they've hit the building. And, it's a huge major success, but no one was outside holding up, for example, an LSAD to point at the drone. Now, the focus, while of course we've seen a lot of really astounding condemnations from Saudi Arabia, from the UAE, from Qatar, we're going to get to what they're focused on even more than the anger that they have expressed at Iran. what was formerly considered a brother Muslim nation to them. Now you have the Saudis openly sharing all intelligence with the United States, flying their own sorties close to the borders of Iran. You have Qatar joining in certain military actions that are unspecified, though we do have confirmation that in some kinetic capacity, Qatar has acted against Iran at this point, likely to do with the Strait of Hormuz. Not confirmed the nature outside of that these were kinetic strikes in the last 24 hours. The UAE is trying to be a little more careful, but we'll get to that. The outrage from the Muslim countries is not really as much even in Iran, although they are condemning them. The Muslim countries are angry, and I'm not joking, at Tucker Carlson. They're angry at Tucker Carlson. Why? Because Tucker Carlson, who just bought a house in Qatar, and has been arguing that this is all Israel's secret great plan to destroy the United States or then destroy the Gulf and whatever. He launched an amazing theory. A couple of hours before, an embassy from the United States in Saudi Arabia was hit by one of these suicide drones. Again, nobody there. Tucker Carlson got on front of the international community posting this video and said that really, Iran's not flying suicide drones. All those videos you're seeing of drones in the air flying and missiles, no, those aren't drones at all. They're fireworks. You know, like the local Spirit Halloween's clearing out a little inventory, right? Little Uncle Kaplan on the side of the interstate. See, really, it's Mossad, the Jewish Israeli secret intelligence. They're organizing secret bombings. Here was Tucker making this claim.
Now, that wasn't a countries, that's the point, wanted to hurt these countries, wanted to sow chaos and disorder because they are rivals of Israel. So it's probably not, hasn't been reported, but it's a fact that last night in Qatar and Saudi Arabia, authorities arrested Mossad agents planning on committing bombings in those countries. Now,
that's a wild accusation. And the reason that's a wild accusation, and I want to make this clear, that makes the countries he is talking about look bad. It makes them look bad. If you are Mr. Super Duper ally, friendo, pal of these particular countries, saying that Mossad was allowed to operate as clearly as possible is not a really great way to get on their good side. And you'll see why here in a couple of minutes. But he makes it, hasn't been reported yet, but it's true.
That's weird. That doesn't make any sense. Why would the Israelis be committing bombings in two Gulf countries which are also being attacked by Iran, aren't they?
So this is the biggest claim, obviously gaslighting nonsense. Now here's the fun. It was not the United States that ended up refuting this. It was not the Israelis that ended up refuting this. It was these particular Arab countries that said, no, we're working with the Israelis right now. The Saudi Arabians released an official statement from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Quote, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia expresses its rejection and condemnation in the strongest terms of the flagrant Iranian attack. The kingdom affirms that the repetition of this cowardly and unjustified attack blatantly violates all international norms, and then they cite a bunch of international laws and statutes. The kingdom emphasizes that the reception of this flagrant Iranian behavior, which comes despite the Iranian authorities' knowledge, the kingdom has affirmed it will not allow its airspace or territory to be used to target Iran, will push the region toward further escalation. The way they are phrasing this particular letter, they're making it clear. Iran struck the U.S. embassy. It wasn't a bombing. It isn't Mossad attempting things. These are clearly Iranian threats. The UAE did the exact same thing. They said, no one's operating in our country. It is just Iran, and we have a right to self-defense, though we're trying to stay out of it as much as possible. Qatar, Tucker's buddy place, right, where he bought a house and said there's Christians everywhere, even though you're not allowed to practice Christianity openly in Qatar. Qatar's foreign minister spokesperson adds that there is no information on Mossad cells operating in the country. None. This comes after U.S. broadcaster Tucker Carlson claimed that Qatar and Saudi Arabia have arrested individuals linked to Mossad. Now, here's a really fun little piece of information for you. Qatar did point out that there are two cells linked to the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps and their intelligence service that have been arrested. Qatari authorities say they've arrested two cells affiliated with the IRGC in the country. They detained 10 suspects, 7 allegedly tasked with gathering intel on vital military facilities, and 3 assigned to sabotage that had received drone training. Wow. It's almost like if you're going to lie, at least be good at it. Radio crew, we'll see you guys in a second. We're going to continue on the live stream. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Now, the president of the United States made another huge announcement today, one that is kind of getting glossed over because on the surface it seems hard to explain. It's not. He says, effective immediately, I've ordered the United States Development Finance Corporation, and this is where a lot of news broadcasters fall asleep because they don't know how to explain it, to provide at a reasonable price political risk insurance and guarantees for the financial security of all maritime trade, especially energy, traveling through the Gulf. So what the President of the United States has ordered is that the United States Development Finance Corporation, that's the DFC, is going to fill in where a lot of maritime international insurance companies have said, hey, it is too dangerous to ship your boat through the Strait of Hormuz, which the Iranians have closed with unicorn wishes, urinal cakes, and duct tape. But here's the fun thing. The President of the United States, recognizing that messing around with international trade causes significant issues to gas prices. As a quick aside, remember a couple of months ago, when people were telling you that you don't need to care what goes on in the Strait of Hormuz or care if the Gulf of Aden is no longer allowed or perhaps certain canals are shut because it doesn't affect you anyway. Now, after gas has gone up by 20 to 50 cents, when the the Strait of Hormuz was closed for like a whopping half hour, you were told. Now all of a sudden everyone's like, well, why would Trump do this? It turns out international trade matters and it does impact you personally. And the President of the United States saying, fine, we will guarantee it and we'll send the U.S. Navy to protect these boats. That is a good move by the President of the United States. It shows that he is very and clearly aware of the affordability concerns regarding energy of the American people. And it will likely end by the end of this, if there is one place, and I'm going to make this clear, that the United States has a permanent presence in the region, it will be a kind of economic outpost to keep the Strait of Hormuz open. Like a Panama Canal situation for the United States. A direct American imperialism. We own this territory right next to Qatar, right there. We are going to be right here. We are going to keep the strait open. Everyone behave. That kind of a thing, if there's anything at all. Now, I'm going to move on a little bit further because now we get into the response from the administration. There are a lot of questions rolling in on the Maritime side of things here. Question from Blue Arrow. Is it true that Ilhan Omar tipped off Iran with U.S. attack plans and that's why the U.S. attacked earlier? I don't think so. No. Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, has made it very clear who received information and why. I guarantee you, if there was someone in the U.S. Congress that was suspected of leaking information of any kind to foreign powers at this particular moment in time, that would be trotted out. That would be a political gift of unseen proportions to this administration. Not very much in the case at all. One of the better questions moving forward here, who's defending Cyprus? Because I didn't answer that question. You're defending Cyprus. That's the answer to that question. The United States. And also when they get there, the French. Oh boy. That's who's defending the island of Cyprus. That is the United States Navy, who consistently does all of the footing of the defense bills so that other countries can import migrants and have free health care. The United States defends those particular regions. Now, the Saudis, as well as the Qataris, appear to be getting on board with the United States as allies and effectively bringing about, and I'm still seeing moving towards this direction, the Abrahamic Accords, kind of an EU in the Middle East, with the Saudis and the Israelis teaming up to head things. Now, we got to bring in the radio crew, got to get some more news. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. Don't go anywhere.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
I hope that you are having a phenomenal evening here. Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast, the kind of evening where you crank up Maria by Brooks and Dunn. It's like 90 degrees outside, open car on the interstate, sunshine, and I love it. Unfortunately, however, most of my colleagues today spent the day in a massive bickering fight over Washington, D.C.'s reaction to the updated news in Iran. Secretary Noam taking off the earrings and going toe-to-toe with Cory Booker because, C-SPAN had to have something to film today. But the President of the United States, and of course, Secretary of State Marco Rubio have been responding to a series of reports as Iran's Assembly of Experts, which is like the College of Cardinals, but with more burqas. They have selected a new Ayatollah, a new supreme leader, Allah Khamenei's son, Mojtaba, as the next leader. Now, this was under the duress of the IRGC. And by that way, I mean that they had AK-47s and then the Chinese submachine variant, the AK-74s, standing in the room and very much encouraging the Council of Experts to vote for Mojtaba as the new amazing Ayatollah supreme leader. Now, it's even money if he even makes it a day. First of all, because the original experts building, all of the 80 of these experts in the council got together this morning their time. And again, because I guess Zoom is haram or something. And while 80 of these individuals were inside, the Israelis, who have completely infiltrated their entire communications network, just bombed the living crap out of this council of experts. Now, I know that may look like a really beautiful place to hold an event, but this is not just Woodstock 99. No. This kind of wreckage, this kind of a crap show, is reserved for the incredible intelligence that suggests meeting in person when a foreign country has complete air superiority over you. Now, we do not know at this point how many were killed. We do not know, by the way, if originally the Council of Experts had selected someone different. We don't even know if he was there in the building with him and he was also killed. All we know is that this afternoon, there was an emergency vote that was held under duress with the IRGC guards standing there, all submachine guns polished and ready, and forced them to elect the son of al-Khamenei. An interesting decision. We will see how that goes. Again, the ballistic missiles dwindling. Here at home, the Department of State and the Department of War briefed the Senate. So, closed door session, basically announced 2 senators, Republicans and Democrats, here's what's going on. And afterward, the real thing happens. All of the media outlets, they swarm the senators and they go, what'd you hear? Is it good? Is it bad? Are we going to have Christmas? What happened? And here's how at least some of the Democrats responded. First, the somewhat measured statement that is probably a little more revealing than he wants. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer.
I left the intelligence briefing more concerned than reassured.
I do want to point out for those who are listening on the radio, of course, he has the pre-printed FedEx Kinko's sign behind him. He's also got Senator Chris Van Hollen also looking really nervous behind him, kind of off to the side, because Van Hollen knows that this is bullcrap. But anyway, Schumer's announcing, I'm more concerned, in case everyone was wondering.
Left the intelligence briefing more concerned than reassured. If the case for war were strong, it would be consistent. Instead, the rationales change by the hour. Regime change, nuclear weapons, missiles, defense, preemptive, which...
I love this. I love missiles, weapons, guns, defense, whales, chickens, a wild goose, a rubber hatchet. Is this Dumbledore saying a few words before the beginning of the banquet at Hogwarts? Oddment, peppermint, willywag. Just Schumer's like, defense, guns, fighters, jets, explosions. Kamehameha. And the press is like, yay, it's amazing. Thanks, Chuck. That's really exciting. Excellent.
Is it? When the justification keeps shifting, a strategy is missing.
All right, so that's his suggestion. There's no strategy. This is willy and nilly. Now, hilariously, Chris Murphy, senator from Connecticut, came out and said essentially the exact opposite.
I was just shocked by the way in which they, A, are dismissing the role that the American people play in deciding when we go to war.
Here we go. Now the plan is that the government knows what they're doing and they're maliciously keeping out the Americans. We asked them, we begged them, please bring in the American people. And they said, no, our plans are too strong.
And how clearly committed they are to an open-ended engagement with no end in sight.
Oh, okay. So here we go. They are so committed to their plan that they have They're going to prosecute this plan forever. And you have Chuck saying there's no plan at all. And essentially, they're just saying, yeah, hop right in that F-22 there and just see what you can hit. You can't have both.
If the war powers vote fails, what can Democrats do? What can Congress do to stop the president from engaging?
We shouldn't be acting like this is business as usual.
That wasn't the question.
Shouldn't be proceeding to legislation, providing votes to proceed to legislation until they put an authorization for military force on the floor of the United States Senate. This is as serious as it gets. This is war and peace. They told us in that room that there are going to be more Americans.
This is war and peace. This is death of a salesman. This is the hatchet. This is the sisterhood of the traveling pants. We're talking serious books now, ones I've read. Incredible. Thank you, Chris Murphy, reminding us that Connecticut, too, can be as awful as California. Exciting stuff indeed. Now, of course, there are a couple of questions that Americans are asking and have every single right to ask. It is good these questions are being asked because Americans do have a right to demand questions. And when you get, for example, the famed Gulf War back in the 90s, when you had certain generals and admirals that would proceed to give really awful press conferences, Americans do have a right to get the real answers. And so the president of the United States was asked, he said, hey, this 30-second sound clip from Rubio said that we did it just because Israel did it, and it was a preemptive. This was Trump's response to that context taken, that statement taken completely out of context. But here's Trump's response to it.
Mr. President, did Israel force your hand to launch these strikes against Iran? Did Netanyahu pull the United States into this war?
No, I might have forced their hand. You see, we were having negotiations with these lunatics, and it was my opinion that they were going to attack first. They were going to attack. If we didn't do it, they were going to attack first. I felt strongly about that. And we have great negotiators, great people that do this very successfully and have done it all their lives very successful. And based on the way the negotiation was going, I think they were going to attack first. And I didn't want that to happen.
So the president of the United States says what everyone remembers. A lot of people in the media, a lot of my friends, colleagues, disgruntled debate opposites and things, they'll tell you history started yesterday. And that one morning, Trump woke up and said, it's a beautiful morning. Hello, Melania. I'm going to bomb Iran. That isn't a thing. That's not how that happened. There was an entire series of events that led up to this. And now, everyone wants to pretend none of that happened. It just magically, the genie from Aladdin was like, you got it, Al. And then just boom, B-2's over Iran. That's not what happened. But again, it only really works when you have little tidbits to pull. Someone who doesn't play that game is Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who is increasingly becoming just the lead star of the administration. I'll say for the 80th time, I'm not surprised. I know some of you are. Scoreboard. Here's Rubio making very clear, the record, setting it straight. People are trying to play semantics gotchas, and it ain't flying.
Yesterday, you told us that Israel was going to strike Iran, and that's why we needed to get involved. Today, the president said that Iran was going to get.
Yeah, your statement is false. So that's not what I was asked very specifically. Were you there yesterday?
Yes, I asked the question.
No, were you the one because somebody asked me a question yesterday, did we go in because of Israel? And I said, you were asking me that follow-up, and I said, no. I told you this had to happen anyway. The president made a decision, and the decision he made was that Iran was not going to be allowed to hide behind its ballistic missile program, that Iran was not going to be allowed to hide behind its ability to conduct these attacks. That decision had been made. The president systematically made a decision to systematically destroy this terroristic capability that they had, and we carried that out. I was very clear in that answer. This was a question of timing, of why this had to happen as a joint operation, not the question of the intent. Once the president made a decision that negotiations were not going to work, that they were playing us on the negotiations, and that this was a threat that was untenable, the decision was made to strike them.
So, to reiterate before we send the radio crew off to commercial, here is the case of what happened. We'd already decided to strike. We'd already decided. They said no on the negotiation, so it's all right. You're not going to play, then we'll play on our rules, and we'll strike you. You have the 60% uranium that you've enriched to 60%, all right? That is bad. That isn't used for cancer treatments. That's not for civilian nuclear power. By the way, Steve Witkoff indicating that we'd actually offered to just pay for all of their nuclear fuel for 10 years if they were just going to do nuclear power and medical radiation. They said no, because they want to use it for nuclear weapons. And we destroyed the facilities they had deep underground, and they were building more. This is not difficult. This is not a difficult concept. And so after they decided, fine, we're going to strike Iran, they aren't going to play, so we're going to play. Then it was, well, then when do we do it and how do we do it? Then it becomes, okay, who's going first? You going first? I'm going first? You talk first? I talk first? That's the question. Pretending not to understand things is not a virtue. Radio crew, we'll see you guys later. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Now, while they're all off on commercial land, I want to get into a little Kristi Noem in the Senate committee nonsense. Nothing happened to the Senate committee today. Why? Because nothing really ever happens in Senate committee meetings. Committees are a waste of time. They're a waste of time. The person who is the one testifying, they go in, they make a big statement. I think things are fine, or I think things are terrible. And then Senator Who Cares goes, I think you're terrible and you're Hitler. And also, you look like moldy cheese. And then they yell back and forth. And then the guy on C-SPAN goes, you've just been watching Senator Jimmy John talking about why everyone's bad. And then that's it. Nothing changes. Committees, because they are televised, are awful and ridiculous. But alas, Secretary Kristi Noem, who's had a rough go of it since she decided to make a lot of statements early before investigations were finished, she got in front and started hitting the Democrats on the shutting down of the Department of Homeland Security and punishing TSA and the Coast Guard because the Democrats didn't like that ICE was already fully funded. And she's right to do this. Here she is in the committee.
The latest Democrat-led shutdown of DHS is reckless, it's unnecessary, and it undermines the American national security, and it harms the men and women who work at DHS and their families. Despite the House passing a bipartisan, bicameral full-year DHS funding bill, it is Senate Democrats who've chosen not to fund the department and have held this department hostage. As a result, critical national security missions, including border security, immigration enforcement, aviation security, disaster response, cybersecurity, and the protection of critical infrastructure are all being strained. Our ability to provide for a safe and successful World Cup is being hindered as well. More than 100,000 dedicated DHS employees are once again being asked to work without pay for the third time in just 5 months. At a time when we've produced the most secure border in history and removed nearly 3 million illegal aliens from our country, disrupting the department responsible for those gains is indefensible. I want to thank the men and women of the Department of Homeland Security for their professionalism, for their dedication, for their commitment to keeping America safe and continuing to show up and work even though they aren't being compensated for it.
All right, all of that's good. All of that's fine. Pre-prepared statements, all right. Then we got into the fireworks. We got into a bit of the yelling. We got the cool zingy kind of quip moments, you know? You have senators asking if she's going to send in the troops to Anschluss in the elections, and she doesn't take the bait and instead fires back, theater.
You rule out the deployment of ICE or CBP to polling places this
Chris Coons. So, good times there.
This November.
There are no plans to have ICE officers at our polling locations. And
I'm glad to hear that, but would you rule it out? Would you say it will not happen?
Do you plan on illegal aliens voting in our elections, Senator?
See, a little quip, a little good stuff, a little leading question excitement. And then a little follow-up. Oh, are you playing? I love it. Just fun. Good times had by all. Of course, it wouldn't be a committee hearing without a little bit of Cory Booker-esque kind of screaming, again, just really, really funny, Booker doing his angry eyes impression.
You are violating the separation of powers, violating court orders, and routinely violating the civil rights of Americans. This is a reckless and out-of-control agency.
These poor people having to find new words to express their displeasure that their colleagues haven't already used. They're like playing Mad Libs with each other. Okay, you say violating, I'll say discrepandating. You say it's bad, I'll say it's worse. And then you get to spit, and I'll just yell and waller my tongue weirdly. Like, that's how these things go. We got to bring the radio crew back. Don't go anywhere. More on this nonsense. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. There is one thing of use, of value, of delight as we get ready to give you some information on the North Carolina and the Texas primaries. A little bit of perhaps one glimmer of useful information that you really do need to know as voters. Republican Senator Thom Tillis of North Carolina, who is about as useful as a flat doorstop. If you want to see how we get into the pearl clutching territory here, whenever we have a Republican administration in office, all of the moderate Republican senators, they get out the fangs and they're like, why are you so bad and awful and terrible? And our norms and our precious traditions. And also, someone in my district asked why I was putting up with you and I was embarrassed and ashamed. That kind of behavior only comes out during Republican administrations from many moderate Republican senators. And then in the Democrat administrations, well, all of a sudden they're like, well, just so glad that you're here and the respect for your office and, you know, a little bit of some friendship and some hugs. So here's Senator Thom Tillis talking to a Democrat for Department of Homeland Security. Let's see if you can catch the differences here.
Case to get hundreds of thousands of dollars of payout. It's going to be another reason why it's a crisis and not just a situation we're trying to work through. Thank you, and I wish you good health.
Thank you, Senator.
Oh, to Mayorkas. Oh, thank you. Oh, hey, I don't like something you're doing. Also, thank you for leaving the borders open. Wish you good health. Thank you. Even though we disagree, we're going to play golf together on Saturday. Here's Thom Tillis a few years later with Kristi Noem.
Why am I disappointed with Secretary Noem? Because we're not going after enough people who did this damage at the expense of running numbers that Stephen Miller wants out of the White House. We just want numbers.
Now, wait a minute. That is what he's yelling about number.
Case to get hundreds of thousands of dollars of payout. It's going to be another reason why it's a crisis. And
oh, wait a minute. Oh, the crisis and the numbers. Totally normal, fine. I wish you good health, friendships, a hug, well, here's your kiss on you. But all of a sudden, Kristi Noem comes into the room. Thom Tillis, he suddenly finds his spine. He borrows Cory Booker's angry eyes. He's screaming. You can see sweat on his forehead.
We want 1,000 a day, 6,000 a day, 9,000 a day because numbers matter, right? No, they don't matter. Quality matters, not quantity, quality.
Ah, yes, the quality of Alejandro Mayorkas was pristine. It was delightful. Oh, wonderful. All of the Americans who died at the hands of violent illegal immigrants because of Alejandro Mayorkas' policies. Oh, no fangs, no concern, no condemnation from Thom Tillis. Nothing like that. Oh, but all of a sudden, you get Kristi Noem in front of you, who, again, there's things to gripe at Kristi Noem about. Of course, absolutely. But you're going to go after, how dare you want to deport illegal aliens? How dare the White House say you're not doing an effective enough job and you're not releasing the data? That's something to be upset about. They're not releasing the data. We've had on Mike Howell from the Oversight Project to discuss that in depth. Maybe get Corey Lewandowski out of your bed, out of the DHS, and go do your job. That's an effective thing to complain about. But your complaint is that they think they should be deporting more and they're not? That's your gotcha? After you made out with Mayorkas in the last administration? Yeah, okay, Thom Tillis. Oh, okay, Mr. Norms. Thank you for that. Please let the door hit you as hard as it can on the way out. I don't care for committees. It's all theater. It's all performance. No one's actually answering any questions. The administration officials always make the case. What do they say? You can come by my office anytime and ask me questions. They never do. They don't care. And why? So they can get in front of C-SPAN. Well, the good lady from Arkansas, remember that I think she's horrible, terrible. It's like, we were having lunch last week. Where did this come from? Well, I wasn't on camera then, young lady. Exciting stuff here in the United States government. All right, on to some of that fraud investigation that I was telling you about. So first of all, more officials from the lovely, joyous Minnesota government are into a bit of problem. They're in some investigation territory. So the Department of Justice has now launched an investigation into several Minnesota officials for allegedly obstructing federal agents. This move escalating the standoff between the White House and sanctuary jurisdictions, refusing to cooperate with immigration and customs enforcement. This is according to The Hill, by the way. While the administration has argued that local interference endangers public safety and violates federal law, Minnesota leaders contend that the tactics of the feds have become overly aggressive and lack proper oversight. So here's why this investigation is here. The Trump administration has said, you got to follow the law. And Minnesota has responded, I don't like your tone. You didn't even ask me how my day was. And now you're mad that I put a hole in the floor. You didn't ask if I even enjoyed my lunch. Tim Walz, this is why people drive by your house and call you things, my dude. So these particular Minnesota lawmakers at the state level, after a series of high-profile incidents, which of course include the fatal shooting of Alex Preddy, Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison, local mayors have filed counter lawsuits against the federal government. Trump obviously has defended the enforcement actions. It's just more lawsuits and investigations, just all kinds of things flying back and forth. However, from the New York Post, Minnesota has also sued the Trump administration in order to block the withholding of $243 million in Medicaid funds. As a reminder, the administration said, hey, show us the receipts. Who's getting the money? What is that money being spent on? And they said, no, you're going to use it to deport illegal immigrants. To which Vice President Vance said, what an odd thing to say. And so they then, with Dr. Mehmet Oz, decided to freeze things until the Minnesotans decided they're going to comply with federal law. So not anything extra exciting in that like court cases are being ruled on right now. There very will likely be by the end of the week some injunctions and such. Radio crew, will catch you guys later. We're going to continue on the live stream for a while with some more. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. All right, now that the radio crew is off to their wonderful final goodbye, we can talk a little bit about some of the other big issues around the country. The Supreme Court of the United States, in a 6-3 decision, has ruled against New York Democrats that were trying to do some additional redistricting to get rid of, I believe, the 22nd House District, which was a Republican district in New York. Now, Samuel Alito essentially argued, we have no problem with political gerrymandering, but you couldn't even do that right. I just enjoy that. There's something about the Supreme Court of the United States issuing rulings in which they say, you're really, really, really bad at this. And even if this was really political, which, by the way, political gerrymandering is fine, it's legal. Gerrymandering is supposed to be legal because it is a way that you, as a citizen of the United States, are supposed to keep your attention on your state legislators. That's why your state legislators are the ones that are in charge of writing the districts and not Congress, for example. So that side, I do want to get to a couple of interesting situations outside of just kind of the really weird fraud and kind of judicial ruling sector of things. Zoran Mamdani, the mayor of New York City, is now under additional fire because he has used the encrypted messaging app Signal to communicate with fellow elected officials and political advisors. And here's the best part, potentially violating record-keeping and freedom of information laws. Here's the thing, if Mamdani or any public official emails a business person, so let's say there's someone who wants to apply for a grant in the state of Kansas, and then they, some kind of a person who thinks they should get money from the state of Kansas, they email the governor's office and they say, hey, I'd like a grant. What do you need from me? We need a little favor here. What if all of my businesses put up your campaign poster for your next gubernatorial run? How about that? A little wink and nudge there, little eyebrow wiggling. You as a taxpayer, you as a citizen of the United States, have the right to file a Freedom of Information Act request in which you see that email. So they can't hide things from you in their official written communications. If you use Signal with legislators and you don't have it set up correctly because it's an encrypted messaging service and you are communicating, let's say, with business leaders, you're not just communicating about, again, internal communication policy. Mamdani can communicate with his secretary on Signal all day long, no problem. Not an issue. Vance can communicate with Hegseth all day long, no problem. But if let's say that I was the governor of Indiana and I decided that my first act after rebuilding Gary, Indiana, with blood, iron, and fire, the next thing I wanted to do was do a little bit of shenanigan scheming, and I wanted to talk with some local business leaders. Let's say override county commissioners and set up some data centers. Definitely not happening. Well, if I used Signal, an encrypted messaging app, to do so, and the messages auto-delete after a little while, well, then you don't have access to them. You can't see how I am using the state apparatus to change the business landscape. That's not allowed. And so, interesting. I'm not seeing a lot of the outrage, of course, that I was told I should have for like the Hegseth situation. Kind of curious, but interesting. So, all right, let's move over to a little bit of the primary race news. A lot of news tonight, Oh, I realize that the Chiron says State of the Union 26. That's not the right Chiron. It doesn't matter. We're going to move on from it. So, let's talk about a little even more quick news here with the lovely primary shenanigans in North Carolina. It appears right now, and producer Daniel, if you might be such a kind-hearted pal, if there are any particular updates on the North Carolina elections, send them on over. But it appears that the main contenders right now for that fabled U.S. Senate seat, it's going to be Roy Cooper, the former governor of North Carolina that has no problem with young girls getting killed. And I mean, that's from his office. He completely mishandled the Laken Riley situation. It was atrocious. It was disgusting. And he was a horrible, horrible governor. He's running for Senate. It looks like he'll be facing off against Michael Whatley, the former co-chair of the RNC. Now, I will admit, I'm a little bit down in the dumps that Michael Whatley and Laura Trump are no longer co-chairs of the RNC. I think that a midterm convention by the GOP would have done a lot to effectuate some pretty great moves for Republicans in the coming election. I'm not sure what the status of that is. The RNC is doing some really interesting things, but I mean, again, I think Whatley would make a great senator of North Carolina, but I think his skills could have been used better elsewhere. Not Laken Riley. Laken Riley was Georgia. Excuse me. I mean, Irina Zarutska. I apologize. Sorry, got that flipped around. Irina Zarutska, the Ukrainian immigrant who was killed by the man on the Charlotte light rail system. Laken Riley, of course, is the young lady that was killed in Georgia. Thanks for that. I shouldn't have to have all of the young ladies that have been slaughtered at the hands of illegal immigrants to keep track of. But unfortunately, those are the policies that continue to persist due to feckless local and state and national leadership. So there's one particular North Carolina House seat that is really, really tough. We do have a couple of pieces of information as we kind of get in here. I'm not seeing anything especially exciting out of North Carolina, and no offense to producer Daniel, but there are a couple of seats that are very, very heavy laden with a lot of Republicans vying for the seat. Texas is where things get really interesting. In Texas, the primary for that Senate seat, of course, you have Ahmed something on the Democrat side who's polling very, very, very low. You have Jasmine Crockett. She's very, very excited. Jasmine Crockett is very excited about the Texas situation. She's got Texas tough all over her banners. She thinks that what she brings to the table is okay. Well, Crockett's got a lot of okay. I can't think of anything, but at least she doesn't blame blatant Iranian terror attacks on white men.
Once again, another mass shooting, this time on 6th Street in Austin. And just before you went on stage, I saw that your primary opponent and Greg Abbott had kind of gotten into it on X, and they both chose to use this moment to scapegoat the immigrant community. The shooter was a naturalized citizen. We've seen efforts already from the Trump administration to denaturalize citizens. My mother-in-law is a naturalized citizen who is incredibly scared. How are you going to balance comprehensive immigration reform, which we do need, and still treating our immigrant community with dignity and not using them as a scapegoat in these moments?
I don't know how it is that we got here. That what one person does somehow is then impugned on an entire community.
Here we go. The real problem with a dirty nuke going off in New York due to an Islamic terror attack would be all of the ensuing Islamophobia. The old Norm Macdonald joke made real.
The facts are the facts. The facts are that the immigrant community actually commits less crime in this country than anyone else. So the idea that we take this one incident, and that's what they do. Listen.
This is the Tucker Carlson. I don't even know anyone who's died in the last 24 years from Islamic terror.
Every time there's some crazy situation like this, black folk sit around and say, oh, I hope they're not black, because we know that that's going to be an additional target on our backs.
Well, that's a weird thing to say. That's a weird thing to say. Or maybe if the person has the property of Allah sweatshirt on and underneath has the Iranian flag shirt on underneath it, and he's doing it for an Islamic terror attack based on the Iranian stuff going on in the Middle East. Hey, guess what? I think I found the motive. Just a little fun fact there. As a quick point, on the Irina Zarutska situation, the issue there, not an illegal immigrant's murder, but a career criminal who should never have been let back out on the street. Now, this is where things get really interesting. James Talarico, we do have some of the Texas results that are coming in here. So right now, the polls, which do not close for another hour, and then some in Dallas, again, another hour into the evening. Just wild stuff going on there. The votes are already being reported online. I don't care for that. I don't care for vote numbers being uploaded before we even get to the polls being completely closed across the entire state. That, I don't care for that at all. But John Cornyn, the incumbent so far, is ahead 116,000 votes to Ken Paxton's 91,800 votes. Wesley Hunt trailing down at 32,500. That's 10.6% of the vote counted so far. There's about 2 million that are expected. It's going to be quite a turnout here. So far on the left side of the aisle, Jasmine Crockett is in the lead, 111,803, 53.9% to James Talarico's 93,892. And then Ahmad Hassan is bringing in a whopping 1,600 so far. So interesting there. On the flip side of Jasmine Crockett is James Talarico, who is a really, really, really weird guy. Essentially, he is Pete Buttigieg, but instead of being kind of weirdly effeminate and gay and making that his personality, he's really effeminate, not gay, and still has made that his personality. Strange. Here's his final pitch to voters.
There is something broken in America. That's because the most powerful people in the world want it that way. Billionaires who want us fighting each other instead of fighting them. They spend so much time and energy keeping us angry and divided by party, by race.
Here we go. Yes. So I debated, again, a friend of mine today over on NTD who attempted to tell me that Talarico, he's the moderate option. He's the moderate guy because, see, he realizes that, yeah, maybe you should have a gun, but there should be all these restrictions and regulations. And yeah, maybe you should have free speech, except there should be all these restrictions and regulations. That kind of a thing. Well, he's the moderate. Here he is saying there are a bunch of rich people who are all corrupt and evil, and they want you all pitted against each other, and there are no Republicans and Democrats. There are only rich people and then Democrats. And I want you to love me because I'm not going to roll over to the Democrat. Guys, that's not a moderate position. That's wacko Looney Tune Town. That's AOC, but white and the classic comb over haircut.
By gender, by religion, to keep us from realizing that there is far more that unites us than divides us.
I do like the piano, like the church invitation behind him. Like the pastor's making the final call. And so you get up there and the pianist starts playing. By the way, I think that's in F sharp, by the way, is the key of that piano.
Because our unity is a threat to their wealth and their power. We will come together across party, across race, across gender, across religion.
He's doing the Beto campaign. Did you notice? You notice? He's doing the Colin Allred campaign. Because we all know how the Colin Allred campaign and the Beto O'Rourke campaigns worked out, right? They were stellar. They were amazing. They were incredible. Of course, this goober went on Joe Rogan, and Joe Rogan's like, why are you a Democrat? And he's like, well, it's because my dad drank a lot. Yep, I'm not joking. Here you go.
Why are you a Democrat?
Well, my mother, as I told you, I was born to a single mom. She was a preacher's daughter from Laredo down on the border. She left home at 19. She moved up to Austin. She met my birth father, who was a high school dropout and had a drinking problem. And that drinking problem sometimes led to being violent with with my mother. And there was one night, it was me and mom. And
I've got news for you on which political party doesn't really like those who beat women. Which one likes those people to be locked up and then stay locked up, as opposed to, those on closed circuit TV beating women after being questioned about embezzlement. Just kind of a thought.
And my birth father, and he had too much drink and got violent again. And that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. And my mom decided right then and there that she was leaving. So she packed all our stuff. She put me in her little Ford Escort. She drove me to the hotel where she worked downtown. The manager let us stay in one of the rooms for a few weeks until we found a little apartment in East Austin.
I mean, again, this is as a personal story. I admire these kinds of stories. I mean, it's very interesting hearing about this kind of stuff from anyone. I come from a broken family. I do enjoy hearing about others' stories from their lives and that kind of a thing, and the tenacity of parents in horrible situations. I do. I love that. What does this have to do with you being a Democrat? Because it sounds like you're asked, why are you a Democrat? And then you started talking about stuff that has nothing to do with being a Democrat at all.
And mom, she took on double duty at the hotel. She fought for me at every instance, even when it was her own physical safety was at risk. And back then, this was early 90s, she could look over at the Texas Capitol and she saw Texas Democrats like Ann Richards, Bob Bullock, people who fought for the little guy.
Oh, piss off.
For working people who were forgotten and left behind. That was the classic Democratic Party.
Right.
And so I remember when I guess I was maybe kindergarten, and someone in school, they were talking about political parties, and I asked my mom what we were, and she was like, we're Democrats because Democrats fight for the people. That was what she said.
This is literally just the John Mulaney goes with his mom to meet Bill Clinton story about why you're a Democrat. That's it. That's all this is. He's like, my mom was really inspiring because obviously she went through a lot of really rough hardship. And the reason she's a Democrat is that she believed in the 90s that Democrats cared about her because they told her they cared about her. Now, sure, maybe their policies did, F all for the safety of women. Maybe their policies let criminals, like in Texas, back out onto the streets. Maybe, but realistically, the real reason I'm a Democrat is because I was in kindergarten and I was like, Mom, what party are we? She's like, we're Democrats. And he was like, oh, okay. And then that's why. Don't do this. Don't do this to yourself. You don't have to play these games. You don't have to go, the reason I'm a Republican is because I grew up in a rough home and realistically as a child, because I grew up in a single parent home, my father made sure that I was in church, in Grace Baptist Church in Newcastle, Indiana, very much. And it was because of those traditional family values that convinced me to be a Republican, because I saw around me Republicans were doing everything to make sure children were in good program. No, I don't have to tell you that because that's bullcrap. The reason that I am a conservative is because I believe conservative things. And I believe that conservative things effectuate good conservative policies that do the most for people's freedoms and for a better treatment of Americans here at home and on the world stage. That is why I am a conservative. I'm not going to say, I'm like, Dad, why? What political party are we? And he's like, son, little Tony, you're a Republican. I was like, okay, Dad, can we hang a poster of Dick Cheney on my wall? Like, that's not a thing. Oh, just retarded. That's just retarded. That's Tim Walz retarded right there. Incredible. All right. There's a little bit more that we're going to be covering later this week regarding some of the information from the particular piece of legislation brought forward by Senator Jim Banks, the Delilah law on banning commercial driver's licenses for illegal immigrants. But again, we'll have to cover some of that later because our writing team over at the Daily Signal is covering that a little bit more in depth. Let's do a little bit of mail time, I think. A little bit of the old mail time here at the end of the show, I think is probably a great way to round out some good evening stuff here. We'll go ahead and flip it over to a little of the old bonus tonus section, answer a couple of questions. So first of all, let's hop right in with the King Doe. He said, when do the deportations start in England again? I don't know. I don't think they have to elect people that are willing to do it first. And I mean, Keir Starmer is feckless and a coward, and he has no idea what he's doing. He always appears as though he was just told by his wife that she has an open relationship. There's nothing he can do about it. That's his entire, purpose. So I don't really, you have to unelect him. You have to get somebody better in, but they have a parliamentary system. Parliamentary systems suck. We're going to get the ruling party together and then the ruling party will elect a leader. That's ridiculous. That's stupid. The founding fathers abhorred that kind of a system because it was a cluster. It was a nightmare. It doesn't work. And shocker, still doing so. Mountain Grown asks, what do we need from Spain? Now, I should point out the comment underneath him, Trey783 says olives, which, yeah, funny. The answer to that question is, what do we need from Spain? Well, now that the Spanish no longer control any interesting territories or islands, I would say nothing, really. We don't need anything from Spain. I say kick them out. Or, recognize those in the mountains. Go ahead and recognize the separatists from Spain at this point. From Alan, does Japan ever have an opinion on anything? Yes, and it's the United States' opinion on everything as it should be. Japan should be a satellite state of the United States. We rebuilt them after World War II. The reason that Japan has such an admired culture is because essentially it was an American reset of Japanese culture, and it shot forward with excellence. So Japan's international opinion really has shifted to become a very pro-nationalist and pro-United States style opinion. And again, when I say a satellite state, I don't mean Japan should be a state of the United States. No. I mean an independent country with whom the United States provides extra favors, like a commonwealth, like how Canada used to be an independent country from the UK, but they also did the same things on foreign policy. That should be the United States' relationship with Japan. For that matter, same with the Philippines. From Last Breath Woodworks, a channel member, on my comment about Ilhan Omar that I didn't think had leaked information about the attack. He said that she had leaked the attack last Thursday, so will she be charged with treason? I mean, pretty much everyone in Congress and the media at large has been pointing out that the attack could be the next day. So it's kind of hard to nail somebody down on that when they're like, oh, the attack is now. This is why on the show I didn't give you a general time window and speculate and say, oh, here it is, because I could be wrong. But in Congress, no one cares. You can say the same wrong thing over and over and over, and people still listen to you. I mean, when she was in office, look at Marjorie Taylor Greene. She's been wrong consistently on everything for the last couple of years. But I mean, for some reason, she still has at least a teeny tiny base. Delpix has asked, I wonder if the F-22 has intercepted any other aircraft yet. Not the F-22. However, there are reports that some of the Israeli aircraft of jets of which I am not clear, at least on which of these jets, which type of jet made this interaction. But there were a couple of Chinese and Russian model jets that were shot in their initial takeoff stage. So not like a true dogfight per se. There have been some reported dogfights, so that's kind of on my perspective there, just for that, right on that line. Just want to make sure that I'm very clear here. How is China doing with all of the military leadership purges? This is from the King Doe. Right now, things in China, you heard me ask Rob Greenway about it yesterday, things are still very, very opaque. It is interesting to see that China is canceling diplomatic communications with Iran, and some of the deals that they had brokered with Iran for additional supplies and material have evaporated. We have a little bit less in contact terms with some of the interior regions and their leaders that might have brokered some trade deals over the last couple of weeks. No one's quite sure what's going on in China itself. A lot of thunder there. But the United States opinion right now, at least from the internal communications we have been able to pull out of the country, they're really, really nervous watching what Trump just did with Iran. Because this means that Taiwan, which was already an uphill battle for them, I mean, if Trump says, fine, we'll insure the boats ourselves and we'll open the Strait of Hormuz. Well, wait a minute. How is China going to block off part of the South China Sea? How are they going to block off the Indo-Pacific? They're not. So that's kind of the what's going on with China on that side of things. From Drizzy Ape, Tony, what is the Supreme Court vote against the tariffs? Was there a new Supreme Court ruling on Is there a new Supreme Court ruling on the tariffs that I'm unaware of? That particular... Okay, nothing new that I'm seeing here. It looks like the Supreme Court of the United States, that was a 6-3 ruling, but it was a different 6-3 ruling than the 6-3 ruling on New York's redistricting. So the 6-3 ruling on New York's redistricting was all 6 of the originalist judges, or I shouldn't say, 4 originalist judges, 2 moderates who are slight contextualists. I'm talking about Justice John Roberts and then Amy Coney Barrett. Again, sorry, I'll get in a fun fight with some of my dear Catholic brothers in Christ when I say that this is more of an issue with Catholic justices, in which believe that the word is not infallible and is subject to change due to tradition. Not a fight to have right now. Again, as you know, a very pro-Catholic Baptist, probably not one to tussle over. But that's why Amy Coney Barrett from Notre Dame has that issue. Regarding the liberal justices, Kagan, Sotomayor, and Jackson has no idea what she's doing, and so just scribbles in crayon in a coloring book while Kagan writes the opinions. And Sotomayor has the same problem, but she's been around long enough to kind of fake that she knows what's going on. So Kagan said that she really didn't like how the Republican appointed justices of the court, I believe is how she put it, have stayed consistent. That was Kagan's argument. The tariff situation, however, had the 3 liberal justices ruling against it, but they ruled against it for completely different reasons than Justice John Roberts, as well as Amy Coney Barrett and Neil Gorsuch ruled against the Trump tariff use under the IEEPA. And the IEEPA wasn't built that way. And to be honest, if you're a really pro-tariff person, the people you have to blame are Peter Navarro and a little bit of Howard Lutnick. Because Peter Navarro essentially just use the IEEPA. Go back and look at the when Peter Navarro was suggesting things. Peter Navarro pulled out the IEEPA like a Jehovah's Witness stands on the corner handing out that same flyer that miscites scripture, like that one. That's how Peter Navarro was like, you want some IEEPA, kid? You want it? Real clear here, not from Chinatown. Good value, good bargain. And it turned out that it was awful. So letting Scott Bessent temper the president a little bit and kind of using tariff implementation in other military policies, using it as a military lever, that makes more sense. And by the way, Spain responded to the president of the United States and Germany's threat about an embargo. And this was their very nerdy, goofball, pathetic response. I'm so sorry I didn't read this to you. From Spain, quote, "The U.S. must comply with international law and the European Union-U.S. trade agreements." No. International law is not a thing. It's not a thing. The United States is not subject to the jurisdiction of international law. The United States voluntarily participates in some elements of international law. The only treaties the United States is bound to are those ratified by the United States Senate. According to the Supreme Court of the United States, the U.S. Constitution, and the legal precedent and congressionally approved and voted for and presidentially signed statutes that have passed between the inception of the Constitution in 1789 and the Supreme Court rulings uphold regarding the U.S. use of tariffs and subject to international trade agreements. Additionally, the Supreme Court reaffirmed the President of the United States has the power to embargo or shove a military middle finger to any country that is acting against the interests of the United States. So if the President of the United States announces he wants to embargo Spain, guess what? Congress already gave the President that power to embargo. It is already outlined. That is a presidential power. Long-term tariff policy is different. But regardless of international law, which right now is just a B-2 Spirit bomber, that's international law. European Union, U.S. trade agreements. Oh yeah. Oh, that's really gonna, link Trump and glue him right to the table. Okay, sure. So, and again, on the difference between the Supreme Court decisions, they're like the 6-3 to the 6-3. The tariff case, I think we went over this on the show. Every single person essentially said there's a Wikipedia meme, I should say. Throughout the Cold War, all of the different sides that were on various civil wars. There's a Nigerian Civil War meme about the United States and the Soviet Union being on the same side, and then Britain and Israel, who was also on the other side, and like everyone was on different sides. China versus the Soviet Union. It was very weird. The UK, who hated China through the Cold War, the China was to the UK as the Soviets were to us. They were on the same side. It was weird. Like the aggressors versus the defendants or the loyalists in that war. This particular ruling by the Supreme Court of the United States was like that. You had Kavanaugh, who sort of agreed with Thomas, but also kind of with Alito a little bit, and then Jackson didn't write anything because she's retarded. And so then Elena Kagan wrote something different than Sotomayor. And then they also disagreed with each other because Sotomayor's response was, well, if Barack Obama was doing this, it'd be fine, but we don't like Trump. And then Alito's response was totally different than Gorsuch's response, which was different than Justice John Roberts' response. And Amy Coney Barrett cited a bunch of things that really have nothing to do with the Supreme Court, but she got her sentences in. It was a weirdly weird series of opinions. So anyway, yeah, as Goat Slobber points out, Jackson is just trying to understand. Yes, that's her constant state of time here. So that all said, tomorrow I am traveling up to the beautiful land of Wisconsin to my alma mater, Maranatha Baptist University, where I will be speaking at our Leader to Leader conference. So tomorrow, if I get up there in time, hopefully we'll have a great show for you. We do have a couple of great, and I mean great, updates from news that I have been waiting to share with you from Tyler O'Neill, our senior editor, on a couple of Democrat operations in states around the country to ban anyone who worked with ICE at all from working in any kind of state or local law enforcement. We're going to talk about that story, as well as a really incredible conversation regarding immigration at large with a heritage nonprofit group. One last super chat here before I hop away from GG Evan 317, $5 super chat, very kind of you. He said, in other news, Chirac lost de Bears, and Indiana is one Bengal tiger away from having half a circus of the football teams. Suffa Chiracis, I'm going to level with you, buddy. I don't give one cotton-picking penny of care about the Chicago Bears moving to Indiana, other than that I love that it hurts Chicago because I hate Chicago. I don't care about the Bears. Again, getting me to care about the NFL or the NBA is already a steep uphill battle because I hate the NFL and I hate the NBA. College football, college basketball, anytime, all day, 8 different screens going, brackets, let's go. You know I love it. I hate the NFL, which rules they change every 5.5 minutes. And then I despise the NBA because, honestly, the basketball goal should be a foot higher. And again, there should be a couple of rule changes, and also stop simping for China. So, yeah, I mean, it's great. The Chicago's losing it, super duper. There are some friendly colleagues of mine who think that this is going to be a big, huge screw over boondoggle to the taxpayers. I don't see that given the way the current legislation is set. Everyone's saying it's going to be wonderful and rosy, and it was a totally clean, just so happened kind of a chance. I don't necessarily believe that either. Come on, I don't play those kind of games. So that all said, have a wonderful evening. Catch you guys tomorrow from a different place, but the same great show. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. Y'all, take care.
I'm Matt Davis, CEO here at Maranatha Baptist University, and I'd like to invite you personally to Maranatha's 4th annual Leader to Leader Conference on March 5th and 6th here in Watertown, Wisconsin. This event, sponsored by our School of Business, offers 2 days of practical insights, valuable connections, and leadership development that will impact your career no matter your field. This year's conference includes keynotes from Ken Barbick, a Maranatha graduate and former Senate-confirmed Assistant Secretary of Agriculture, and currently serving as a senior lobbyist and advisor to Fortune 500 companies. My friend Tony Kinnett, another Maranatha grad who now serves as a national correspondent and syndicated radio host for the Daily Signal. And Adam Morgan, president of Majesty Music and a former member of South Carolina's legislature. Becoming a more intentional, effective leader starts here. Take the next step in your leadership journey and join us March 5th and 6th for 2 days of learning, networking, and growth that will set the tone for the rest of your year. To learn more, visit mbu.edu/leader-to-leader. Can't wait to see you here on Maranatha's beautiful campus March 5th and 6th for the 4th annual Leader to Leader Conference.